Well, we gotta change plans again. Yesterday after I got this thing out, I took it over to my buddy's place, had him blast it for me so that I could do the welding on it that I needed to do, and it turned into Swiss cheese. It was fucking junk. It's been broke up here and patched together at one point, and this has been welded back. The front walker bearing support has been broken off and welded back. That walker's junk. But there is enough good iron in it to cut patch panels to put my walker back together, which my walker is perfectly fine from here all the way back. It's just this part. So I've already got all the pieces cut out that need to lay in here. Well, not all. I got all the pieces to put the grate, and then once we get the grate in, get the sides welded back up, and then I'm gonna have to cut a patch out for this out of this section here, and we're gonna lay some flat stock in from here back into here somewhere and plug weld it in for support, and should be good. And I'm gonna have to cut a patch out from right here to put in here, because I don't know how that got broke out, but it is. So yeah, the joys of having a walker combine, I tell you what. And it probably, like I say before, it probably would have never broke this bad if it wasn't for the fact that a rock had gone through it and took this section completely out. And when I bought it, the first time we started working on it, right after I bought it to get it ready to go, we found that busted concave, but I don't remember the walkers being broke out. And to tell you the truth, I don't know if you can see this part of the walkers from the access door, because I think these tuck back in under that concave. So unless you were actually physically looking for it, which, I mean, I guess you should, but it's not not the first thing that pops into your mind, because if the walkers go roundy round, they shouldn't be broke. But yeah, how this thing hadn't broke yet, I don't know, or how this thing hadn't broke off of the front crank, I don't know, because there's literally that much steel holding the whole thing on the front crank. But anyhow, I guess get to welding. So ran into a little bit of a snag. It's not gonna hold me up, just had to add a little bit more steel. Apparently they had idiot engineers back then too, because one would think that in order to have parts commonality between all three combines, they would have just used the same walkers in all three models and just added a walker for every size machine. Apparently they decided that they needed to make different size walkers because a 545 walker is 3/4 of an inch narrower than a 525 walker. So that was a little bit of a surprise. So I had to add some steel in there to give me some more meat to weld to. So I got that. We'll get that to fit in there, or fit in there just fine. Although it'll have a little gap in between the rib and the sidewall of the walker, which shouldn't affect anything because these aren't welded in anyhow, they're just there. This, I'm gonna have to make some spacers out of some 1/4 inch flat stock to get me enough meat on either side, which shouldn't be that big of a deal because these are kind of thin anyhow. So I'll probably just cut them off and weld this to the flat stock and then weld the whole thing in there. And this, I don't know what I'm going to do yet. But cross that bridge when we get to it. Well, it's in there. A lot of little spot welds. But, I don't know, it's solid. The only thing that was a little disappointing was that the grate got a little thin right here and that piece fell out, but I don't know. It will or it won't. I mean, it's better than what I started with, which was nothing. Had to add some steel here and here to get that piece to fit in there right. But it went right in there nice, so I guess the one thing I didn't check is this. Well, shit. I don't think you could ask for any better than that. This one's gonna be a little screwed up yet because there's no meat right here, and it's probably like that. So that'll get straightened out when we put the patch in, but hell, that side's straight. Which this side's the most important because it's got the other walker right here, and you don't want them things running into each other. But my part is done because all these spider cracks are going to need TIG shut, and I'm not the best at TIG welding because I'm too shaky. And one of these days I need to learn, but a straw walker is not probably the best place to be practicing, because if that breaks, we're going to have a bad day. So that's going to be Dad's part. Okay, well, I'm waiting for Dad to get to the point where he can weld that. I'm working on these two, because they both had the hole right here. And this is before, and this is after. What I did was I took another hunk of grate out of that 545 walker, split it in half, and basically just lay it in like so, and drilled holes in the back and plug welded it into the fins here, and then welded it into the rail. It's a pain in the ass to get in there and try to grind that out clean so you can weld it so the welds look like hell. Every time you touch it with a gun, the damn thing starts sizzling. I did what I could with it, but it is what it is. It's stuck in there and ain't coming out, I'll tell you that much. Nobody will see it when it's in the combine. So, yeah, just got to do this one. And then these two walkers will be ready to go back in. And that one, I got to cut a couple more pieces to lay in there for patching. Just for the sides, the grate and everything's all in. So, yep. Sorry I'm not getting more video of actually welding and shit. I'm just moving around so much that it's impossible to get a decent shot. So, I'm just kind of showing you as I go. Figure it's enough to get the point anyhow. Well, here's the new chaff curtain. I nabbed a piece of conveyor belt. This stuff here. And got the old one apart, traced it out, and cut it with a Stanley knife. I got to make one more weight bar because apparently it chucked one at some point. But other than that, that's ready to go back in. Originally it was riveted together. I put it together with bolts because obviously the rivet didn't work. So, well, can't say that. It's been in there since 1968. They worked, but this is easier. And it'll do the job just fine. But that'll be a job for tomorrow. Get that done, or make that little weight bar. Hopefully get that walker done. And it'll probably be Tuesday before I get a chance to get the combine back together, because we got chances of storms tomorrow. So unfortunately she's gonna have to sit outside through the rain, because I got enough shit tore apart on it that I don't want to drive it back to the barn because it's all tore apart, and I don't really want to drive it much past the yard where I got it sitting in the yard right now, because I'm scared of shit falling off. So is what it is. I need a shop. But anyway, we will catch you guys tomorrow when we pick up where I'm leaving off here. Well, I tell you what, if you'd have told me on Saturday when I pulled that thing out of the combine that it could be put back together, I'd have probably laughed your ass right out of the shop. But there it is. Dad went in and tigged all this back together, because this side had the big crack in it that was up into, well, yeah, that crack went from here, or was right here. These are my plug welds from welding that back in. This spot was all broke out and there's a bunch of metal missing, so I cut a patch and we patched that back in. And then this was the side where it was all busted off. This was hanging and there was no steel right here. So I took that other walker out of that 545 and cut that profile patch out of it, and Dad tigged that back in. And then had to tig all this shut too because it was broke out there. So, yeah. And then right now, what I'm doing is welding this flat stock in on both sides. And this is going to happen on all three walkers. It's 1.25 inch by 1/4. And basically, on this particular walker, it's to help bridge this gap, or bridge, yeah, right here where this crack is, and right here where this crack is, it's to bridge that. Because since you welded it shut, you got a potential that it's going to go in and crack right next to the weld again. So that helps bridge that, and it's going to eliminate that issue. Plus, it substantially strengthens the front of that walker, and it comes clear back into here. So you get here in this spot where they have this 90-degree, nothing going on here. What they should have done was radius the front of this and brought this up into here. And that would have helped a lot, but they also probably weren't expecting this combine to run this long either. So basically that brings the strength of this box section all the way up into here. So, and this is going to get done to all three walkers. A, because it's going to help strengthen the other two so that they don't break. And B, this adds quite a bit of weight to the front of the walker, and you don't want to have one throw in the crank throwing more weight around than the other two, because it's going to throw everything out of balance. So you want to do this to all three walkers to keep the crank in balance as well. So this is the first one I got done. I got there, all plug welds all the way down through there. And then I made sure to get two real good ones in that, where the walker bow, or where the crank bow is. So, yeah. 4 more put in. And with any luck, here in about an hour-ish, we'll be putting walkers back in the combine. Alright, well, show you what we got going on here before I get the walkers back in, because they're ready to go. Yesterday, while Dad was taking that thing back together, I got the last weight bar made for that curtain and got it put back in, which turned into a fiasco. Because when I got it, or when I took it out, I basically just bent the rod because I couldn't get it all the way out. Well, when I got to looking in the book, trying to figure out, hold on here, you're going to look at a bunch of green for a minute. When I was trying to figure out exactly what the heck was going on with it. So that curtain has 2 positions it could be in. It's got the forward position, which is that empty hole right there, which is for light crop conditions. The one it's in now, which is that guy right there, is for heavy crop conditions. Well, on that front hole, they have a clearance hole drilled in that angle iron so you can get the rod all the way out. On that back hole, it wasn't there, so I had to drill that, which was real fun. And it's lucky I'm a skinny son of a bitch, because I had to lay on top of the elevator, and I was able to push myself with my foot up that bar and get myself up high enough that if I laid in there at about a 45-degree angle, I could use both hands. And I was only in and out of there about 6 times. That was fun. So that allowed me to get that rod out far enough to get that curtain back in. And then I got that seal replaced for the rear of the grain pan, so that's good to go. And that curtain is called a retarding curtain for anybody that doesn't know about walker machines. And basically the entire function of that curtain is to keep the rear beater, which is that guy right there, from being able to throw grain all the way back to the back of the walkers, which means it doesn't get the time to be thrashed out. So that's what the purpose of that is. And you want it in the rear position for a heavy crop, that way stuff or shit doesn't bunch up behind the concave. Because if you don't give it enough area for the walkers to get a hold of it, it'll sit back there. And if you put that curtain in the frontmost position, it's only like 6 inches behind the rear concave, which doesn't give it a whole lot of room. So anyway, I am going to, where can I stuff you guys? I think if I hang you right there, you'll be able to see most of what's going on, maybe. Or maybe I put you right there. Maybe if I put you right there. Or maybe up there. Maybe up there. It'll be out of my way and you'll be able to see most of what's going on. This is the part where you try not to skewer yourself. This guy's gotta go over here. And should be able to get the rest of the way from in there. Now, what they want you to do, if you're just doing one walker block at a time, like what I was initially doing before the whole broken walker fiasco showed up, you don't got to worry about this. You just go through and replace one bearing at a time and you don't really have an issue. However, what they want you to do when you remove a walker completely is the front bearing retainer or bracket on the walker just has 4 bolt holes in it. The back one, the bolt holes are slotted front to rear. So what you do is you put the front bearing together and tighten that up all the way. The back one you assemble and you leave it loose. And they want you to run the walker over by hand a couple times, and it allows that back bearing to find center so that it doesn't bind. And as long as nothing's binding, you can come back, go ahead, tighten it up, move on to your next walker. So I got to get that front one in, tighten it down, get the rear one, rotate it, go from there. And also, well, I'll grab the stuff and show you. So originally, when this thing was new, they offered these paper shims. They had 2 different sizes. These are the thin ones, and then they had a thicker one, and I can't remember the thickness of them. It lists them in the book. But basically what you did is if you assembled the bearing and you had some binding, you would put those shims in there, like so, and that would spread the bearing apart and open up your clearance. What I found when I did the rear walkers on this, or when I did the rear bearings on this the first time, was that the cranks wore enough that you don't need the shims. So I guess we'll see what the front does. I'm assuming it's going to be the same. But I guess, crawl in there and get that front one done. Alright, front bearing's in. Now I gotta do the back one. Another point to make, when you're putting your walkers in, you want to make sure that both crank throws are in the same position. So like right now, front one's down, you want the rear one down. Because it is possible to have the front one down and the rear one up and have it still line up, and that's a bad deal. You're gonna start breaking shit. So, we drop the bolts in. Easier said than done. Come on. There we go. There's that. And then your bottom half. And the locking plate. And then, like I say, you're going to want to leave this hand tight so that it can walk around, do whatever it needs to do. And then roll the walker over by hand. And it should have found its own center. That's kind of weird rolling it over with only one walker. Then you can go ahead and tighten your bolts up. And you got to remember that these are only wooden blocks, so you don't got to crank the hell out of them. You just get them snug, and then you bend the tabs down on the locking plate, and you're good to go. And because these nuts are so big, you don't actually got to bend the tabs far enough to hit the nuts, because if they start to rotate, if they're close enough, they snag and they can't go nowhere. So and because there's only one walker in there, it does not like me turning it with the rear crank. But like I say, you just, right now both cranks are down. You want to make sure they stay that way, because if you get them out of time, you're going to break something. And what I found when I took this thing apart is life is a whole lot easier if you do the left and the right first and then put the center in. Because since the outer two have this tall straw deflector on them to keep stuff off the side of the machine, and they're taller. They don't like to fit out the back on them standing up, so if you can lay them on their side at like a 45-degree angle, they slide right in. So if you do the left and the right first, you'll have a lot better time. So I'm going to get the other two in here and go from there. Well, grain pan's back in. All the drives are put back together. All the walker bearings are tight. Everything pertinent and important back here is put together. So I guess at this point the only thing to do is to roll it under its own power, or roll it over under its own power. Roll it under its own power. It don't make no fucking sense. These things got throttle pumps in them, so you can pump them just like a pickup. Well, a carbureted car or truck, anyway. Well, I'm a little nervous. Hopefully we don't hear any funny noises. Kind of had a lot of crap tore apart. Well, so far so good. Wow, those are so much quieter, son of a bitch. Used to be you come back here, all you hear is art from them walkers going round and round. I should have done that a long time ago. This is the first stuff running with that chain in there too. That's a crap ton quieter. Not catching anything, that's good. Well, I guess let her eat and see what happens. Throw you guys in there real quick and see what happens, but I don't want to hurt the camera. That'd be a wild ride for you. there's that. Well, that makes me feel better. Just have to kind of keep an eye on them for a little while when I first start cutting beans here, and make sure they're not getting hot. So yeah. And with that little part of the project's done. Now I found a crack in the chopper, which is gonna be real easy to fix. There, like in this part of the housing down to the bearing, there's a little crack in it that'll be probably weld that shut and put a little plate behind it or something. See how good it welds up. And then with that, drop the transmission, which I was looking in the manual yesterday or the day before. One of the two. I was looking at the manual for something, and I went to the transmission section, and there ain't shit inside that transmission. And the shift rails just have two detent notches cut in them. And I'm thinking that it's got to be a broken detent spring. I don't know what the hell else it'd be, but all you got to do is drop the transmission and pull the cover, which, to tell you the God's honest truth, there's enough room in there. I may not even have to drop the transmission, because if you pull the cover, the detents are back over here. At least by the picture. So I might not even have to drop the transmission, which would be great, because it's not a terrible job, but it still sucks. I've done it once in that white 7300, and that was enough for me. So anyway, I guess that's it for this one. We'll catch y'all on the next one.